At the altar, she whispered, "I can't do this, he's just more." So I announced the wedding was off and took my honeymoon solo. Now she's broke, alone, and I don't even think about her. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The air in the old church was thick with the scent of lilies and spent candle wax. 1,000 dust motes danced in the colored light streaming through the stained glass window, painting the aisle in hues of sapphire and ruby. At the end of that aisle, standing beside the elderly priest, I was the happiest I had ever been. My tuxedo felt like a second skin, not restrictive, but powerful. My hands were steady. My heart was a steady, booming drum of certainty. This was it. Everything had led to this moment. I caught my father's eye in the front pew. He gave me a small, proud nod. My mother was dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Every face in the pews was turned towards me, beaming. And then the doors opened. There she was, Hannah, a vision in ivory silk and lace, her arm linked through her father's. The soft gasp that went through the congregation was a physical thing. She was radiant, ethereal, and she was walking towards me. Her eyes, the color of warm whiskey, were locked on mine, and in them I saw my future. A house, kids, growing old on a porch somewhere. I saw inside jokes and shared silences and a love that I thought was as unshakable as the earth itself. The world narrowed to the space between us. The organ music swelled and faded. Her father placed her hand in mine. It was cool and trembled slightly. Nerves, I thought, giving her fingers a reassuring squeeze. My brave girl. We turned to face the priest. His voice was a gentle, rasping drone, full of ancient wisdom and blessing. I heard the words, but they were background noise to the symphony playing in my soul. I was memorizing the line of her neck, the way a stray curl had escaped her intricate updo, the faint scent of her perfume, jasmine and vanilla. My wife, to have and to hold, from this day forward. The priest intoned, his eyes moving from me to her. He smiled. Hannah, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to live together in matrimony, to love him, to honor him, to comfort him, and to keep him in sickness and in health, forsaking all others, for as long as you both shall live? The silence that followed was a beat too long. Just a single, suspended second. I felt her hand tense in mine. Then, she leaned in. Her lips were close to my ear, her breath a warm ghost against my skin. The congregation would have seen it as an intimate, wifely gesture, a secret promise between soulmates. The words that came out were not a promise. They were a detonation. I can't do this, she whispered, her voice low and thick with a terrifying finality. I'm so sorry, but Liam is here. The name hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Liam, her ex, the one she described as a passionate mistake, the one I'd thought was ancient history, and seeing him just. She continued, her whisper gaining a twisted, fervent energy. He's just more of everything I need. More passion, more excitement, more everything. I can't marry you. The world did not so much tilt as it simply dissolved. The booming drum of my heart stuttered and stopped. The vibrant colors of the church bleached to a blinding, painful white. The scent of lilies suddenly smelled funereal, cloying. I could feel every single thread in the fabric of my tuxedo jacket, every pore in my skin. My gaze, unbidden, flickered to the third pew on the left. And there he was, Liam. He wasn't smirking. He didn't look triumphant. He looked at me with an expression of profound, pitying smugness, as if he'd known a devastating secret all along and was finally seeing it play out. He gave me a slow, almost imperceptible shake of his head. A roar filled my ears, the sound of my entire future collapsing in on itself. I saw the life we'd planned, the wedding photos, the honeymoon in Bali, the little house with the big yard, shatter into a million glittering shards and blow away in a silent wind. I should have crumbled. I should have screamed. I should have begged. But I didn't. A strange, surreal calm descended over me. It was like being encased in ice. The panic, the humiliation, the soul-crushing pain. They were all there, but they were locked away behind a thick, soundproof wall. My mind, usually a chaotic place, became a place of pure, cold logic. I turned my head slowly back to Hannah. Her eyes were wide, glistening with what I now realized were not tears of joy, but of panicked regret. She was waiting for my reaction, for the scene, for the drama. I would give her none. I gently let go of her hand. The priest was staring, his mouth slightly agape, the ceremony frozen on his lips. I took a single, deliberate step towards him. "May I?" I asked, my voice not much louder than Hannah's whisper, but steady. Absolutely steady. Bewildered, he handed me the microphone. Hannah found her voice. "What are you doing?" she hissed, a note of fear cutting through her earlier resolve. I ignored her. I turned to face the crowd. 200 faces, a sea of confusion and dawning concern. My parents looked terrified. Her parents looked pale. I brought the microphone to my lips. "I'm sorry to inform you all," I said, my voice echoing with a calm clarity through the silent church, "that the wedding is canceled." A collective, sharp intake of breath. A few gasps. "It seems the bride has had a change of heart." I continued, my eyes sweeping over the crowd, never landing on Liam. "Thank you for coming. Please, enjoy the reception. The food and drinks are paid for." I handed the microphone back to the stunned priest. I didn't look at Hannah. I didn't look at my parents. I didn't look at anyone. I simply turned and walked. I walked back down the ruby and sapphire aisle I had just ascended in triumph. I walked past the frozen, horrified faces of my friends and family. I walked through the heavy wooden doors of the church and out into the blinding, ordinary afternoon sun. The door swung shut behind me, muffling the eruption of chaos I knew was happening inside. I didn't hear it. All I heard was the echo of a single word, ringing in the new, hollowed-out chamber of my soul. More. The airport was a blur of noise and motion, a stark contrast to the sacred silence I'd left behind in the church. I stood at the check-in counter, my single backpack at my feet. The attendant, a woman with a kind, tired face, looked at my ticket. "Honeymoon suite in Bali," she said, a smile blooming. "How exciting. Is your wife checking in separately?" I looked at her, my face a placid mask. "There is no wife. It's just me." The smile vanished, replaced by a flustered, pitying look. "Oh, I'm so sorry." "Don't be," I said, my voice even. "It's a long story. Just the one ticket, please." The flight was 14 hours of suspended animation. I didn't sleep. I didn't read. I stared out the window at the endless, featureless blue, the word more looping in my mind like a corrupted audio file. More passion. More excitement. What did that even mean? Was our life together, the lazy Sundays, the shared jokes over burnt dinners, the way she'd curl into my side during a thunderstorm, was that less? Was it worthless? I arrived in Bali. The air was heavy and warm, smelling of frangipani and diesel. The resort was everything we dreamed of, private villas with infinity pools overlooking emerald rice terraces. The honeymoon suite was strewn with rose petals, a bottle of champagne chilling in a silver bucket. A note read, "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Davis." I swept the petals onto the floor with my arm. I opened the champagne, not to celebrate, but because I was thirsty. I drank it from the bottle, sitting on the edge of the king-sized bed that seemed to stretch for miles, empty on her side. The next 2 weeks were a study in surreal dissonance. I did everything we had planned alone. I watched breathtaking sunsets paint the sky in shades of fire, feeling nothing but a cold hollow in my chest. I swam in the warm, turquoise water, letting the silence of the ocean fill my ears. I ate exquisite meals at tables set for two, the vacant chair across from me a monument to her absence. I didn't cry. The tears were there, a vast, frozen lake beneath the ice I'd encased myself in. To let them out would be to acknowledge the pain, and I wasn't ready. I was in survival mode. So I just existed. I breathed in, I breathed out. I let the world happen around me. When my phone connected to the resort Wi-Fi, it exploded. A torrent of texts, voicemails, and missed calls. Dozens of them. From my parents, her parents, friends, and of course, from Hannah. I didn't read them. I didn't listen. I went into the settings and blocked her number. The rest, I ignored. This was my sanctuary, my bubble of nothingness. The outside world, with its questions and its pity and its drama, could not intrude. I returned home 2 weeks later, tanned and physically rested, but emotionally still in that church, frozen in that single, devastating moment. I drove from the airport directly to my apartment. I used my key, half expecting, I don't know what. A confrontation? Her, waiting in tears. The apartment was empty, and it was a mess. It seemed she had come back after the wedding that wasn't, packed in a frantic hurry, and left. A drawer was hanging open, a trail of clothes leading to the door. A framed photo of us from a hiking trip was face down on the floor, the glass cracked. It was then that the first flicker of something other than numbness broke through. It wasn't sadness. It was a cold, clean anger. Not at her for leaving, but at her for this. For the disrespect of this chaotic aftermath. For turning our home into a crime scene of a discarded life. I worked methodically, robotically. I filled boxes with my things. I took down every picture, removed every trace of myself from the space we'd shared. I left the keys she had forgotten to return on the kitchen counter, next to the cracked photo. I did not look back. I was staying at a temporary corporate apartment when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello. You can't just ghost me. Her voice was a ragged, trembling wire. It was Hannah. We need to talk about this. You humiliated me. The ice held. There's nothing to talk about, Hannah. You made your choice clear. It wasn't a choice, she cried, and I could picture her, running a hand through her hair, her eyes wild. It was a feeling, a force. You and I were safe, but Liam, he's alive. Don't you want me to be happy? To feel alive? The hypocrisy was breathtaking. She was asking for my blessing on her own destruction. The part of me that had loved her for 5 years wanted to scream, no, I want you to be safe. With me. But that man had died at the altar. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said, my voice flat, final. Do not contact me again. I hung up. I blocked the number. Then I poured a glass of water and drank it, my hand steady as a rock. The months that followed were a slow, deliberate process of rebuilding. I found a new apartment, bought new furniture, and established a new routine. I worked longer hours, not to escape, but because I found a strange comfort in the focus it required. I started going to the gym, channeling the dormant anger into physical exertion. The hollow space inside me began to fill, not with someone else, but with a new version of myself. One that was quieter, more self-reliant, and fiercely protective of his own peace. I had heard nothing from Hannah's circle. I assumed she was living her passionate, exciting life with Liam. I didn't care to know. Her chapter was closed. Then, one evening, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in a while. Sarah. Sarah was a mutual friend who had always been firmly in Hannah's camp, but she was also pragmatic and had never fully bought into Hannah's dramatic flair. I hesitated, then answered. Hey, Sarah. Oh my God, you actually picked up, she said, her voice a mix of relief and gossipy excitement. Look, I know I shouldn't be calling, and you can tell me to fuck off at any point, but you won't believe what's happening. I thought you should hear it from me before it becomes common knowledge. I felt a distant curiosity, like hearing about the plot of a movie I'd walked out of. Okay, what is it? It's Hannah. And Liam. She took a dramatic pause. It's a complete shit show. I said nothing, giving her the silence to continue. So, they had this quick, tacky courthouse wedding like, a month after she left you. No one was there, just 2 random witnesses they pulled off the street. It was so sad. I remained silent. Anyway, she continued, undeterred. It all fell apart almost immediately. Liam lost his job. Apparently he has a real problem with authority. Who knew? And he made no effort to find a new one. He just moved into her place and started living off her credit cards. I could see it. The passion of unemployment and financial irresponsibility. It got worse, Sarah said, her voice dropping. He's not a good guy. Like at all. He started getting really controlling. Who she could see, where she could go. He'd yell at her if dinner wasn't perfect. My friend Maya saw them at a bar, and he was just degrading her in front of everyone, calling her stupid. It was awful. I felt a twinge, not of sympathy for Hannah, but of a grim, cold validation. This was the more she had chosen. More abuse. More instability. The final nail, Sarah said, savoring the delivery, was that he was cheating on her. The whole time. With some girl he met at the gym. Hannah found texts on his phone that were even more graphic than the ones she'd sent him when she was with you. The irony is just wow. So what happened? I asked, my tone still neutral. She confronted him, and he just laughed. Told her she was a boring, predictable burden and that he was done. He cleaned out their joint account, what was left of it, anyway, and moved in with the gym girl. Left Hannah with a mountain of credit card debt he'd racked up and a lease she can't afford on her own. She had to move back in with her mother. She's a complete mess. Doesn't leave the house. Just cries all day. She waited for my reaction. She was expecting, perhaps, an "I told you so," or maybe a glimmer of triumphant satisfaction. What I felt was nothing. It was like she was describing the fate of a character in a book I'd read long ago and barely remembered. There was no joy, no sorrow, just a vast, empty indifference. "Okay," I said. "Okay," Sarah repeated, incredulous. "That's all you have to say? After what she did to you? What would you like me to say, Sarah?" I asked, my voice calm. "It sounds like a series of unfortunate choices that led to a predictable outcome. It has nothing to do with me." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I had finally given her the reaction she least expected. No reaction at all. "Well, yeah, I guess it doesn't," she finally said, her tone deflated. "I just thought you should know." "I appreciate the information," I said, polite and detached. "Take care of yourself, Sarah." I hung up. I looked around my clean, quiet, peaceful apartment. The setting sun cast a warm glow across the floor. I picked up the book I was reading and found my page. The story of Hannah was over. Her downfall was just a footnote. The silence after Sarah's call was a peaceful one. The karma was not a dish I had ordered, but I found I had no appetite for it anyway. It was just noise. I focused on my work, my gym routine, the slow, deliberate construction of a life that was entirely my own. The ice around my heart had melted, not into a messy puddle of old emotions, but into a clear, still lake. I could see the bottom, and there was nothing of her there. Then, the first text came. From a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was hers. Unknown number. 10:14 p.m. I made the biggest mistake of my life. He was a monster. You were my rock. Please, can we just talk? I read it. I felt nothing. No surge of victory, no pang of pity. It was like getting a spam email. I deleted it and blocked the number. 2 days later, another new number. Unknown number. 2:31 p.m. Remember our trip to the mountains? That was real. What we had was real. Liam was a fantasy. A terrible, stupid fantasy. I see that now. This one was more clever. It targeted a specific, potent memory, a weekend in a cabin, where we'd been snowed in with nothing but a fire and each other for 3 days. It had been perfect. Now, the memory felt like an artifact from a museum, interesting to look at but devoid of any personal connection. I deleted and blocked. A week of silence passed. Then, the tone shifted. Unknown number, 11:07 p.m., so you're just going to ignore me? After everything? I guess you never really loved me either. You're just as cold as he said you were. There it was. The true colors, bleeding through the desperate veneer. When the pleas didn't work, the anger emerged. She was not sorry for what she had done. She was sorry for the consequences. I was no longer a person to her, but a tool for her comfort that had refused to function. The text was almost amusing in its hypocrisy. I didn't block this one immediately. I stared at it for a moment, a faint, wry smile touching my lips. Then I deleted it. The block felt unnecessary. Her words had just confirmed the absolute correctness of my path. The text stopped, but the campaign wasn't over. A few days later, my phone rang. Hannah's mom. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but I knew that would only prolong it. I needed to shut this down definitively. I answered. "Hello, Patricia. You're really going to abandon her now?" Her voice was sharp, laced with a mother's frayed nerves and a toxic sense of entitlement. After what that animal did to her, she's learned her lesson. The poor girl is shattered. A real man would find forgiveness. I took a slow breath, my voice adopting the calm, professional tone I used with difficult clients. "I'm sorry you're having to watch your daughter go through that." An acknowledgement of her feeling, not an apology. However, Hannah terminated our relationship. I am not responsible for her recovery. I wish you both the best, but this will be the last time we speak. I didn't wait for a reply. I ended the call and blocked her number too. The line was drawn. The moat was filled. My castle of peace was secure. A year and a half after the wedding that wasn't, I found myself at a chic, minimalist art gallery in the heart of the city. The air smelled of crisp champagne and expensive perfume. Soft, ambient music wove through the murmur of well-dressed patrons. I was there with Clara. Clara was a force of nature, an architect with a sharp mind and a laugh that could cut through any gloom. We'd met through work 6 months prior, and it was easy. There were no games, no dramatic proclamations. We were two whole people who chose to build something together, piece by steady piece. She knew about Hannah, in the way one knows about a past surgery, a fact of history with no present-day pain. I was standing before a large, abstract canvas, a swirl of dark blue and gold that reminded me of a night ocean. Clara was at the bar, fetching us fresh drinks. I felt a hand on my arm. I turned, expecting Clara. It wasn't her. It was Hannah. She looked diminished. The radiance I remembered was gone, replaced by a brittle thinness. Her eyes, once so bright, were shadowed and darting. She was dressed nicely, but the clothes hung on her a little wrong, as if she'd borrowed them from a more successful version of herself. "Mark? Oh my God," she breathed, her voice trembling. You look good." I did. I was filled out, healthy, dressed in a well-tailored suit that Clara had helped me pick out. I looked like a man who slept soundly at night. "Hannah." "Hello," I said. My voice was polite, detached, the way you'd greet a vaguely familiar face from a long-ago job. Her eyes welled with tears instantly. It's been so hard." The words tumbled out in a practiced rush. "I think about you every day. I see now what I threw away. What we had." She was waiting for me to agree, to say I'd thought about her too, that what we had was special. I let the silence hang for a moment, then shattered her narrative with a simple, unassailable truth. "That feels like a lifetime ago," I said, my gaze steady. She flinched as if struck. Is there any chance?" She left the question hanging, a desperate, frayed thread of hope. Before I could answer, Clara appeared at my side, handing me a flute of champagne. "Hey, sweetie, have you seen the Oh Hello?" She smiled warmly at Hannah, her eyes curious but friendly. I turned to Clara, the mask of indifference melting into a genuine, easy smile. I slipped my arm around her waist. "Clara, this is Hannah, an old friend," I said. The term was perfect, neutral, distant, and utterly non-threatening. "Hannah, this is my girlfriend, Clara." I saw the understanding dawn on Hannah's face. It wasn't just that I had moved on. It was the way I had moved on. She saw the effortless intimacy between Clara and me, the way our bodies leaned into each other, the quiet confidence in Clara's posture. She saw the more she had been so desperate for, and she realized, with devastating clarity, that she had not been chasing it. She had been running away from it. From me. Her face crumpled. The last vestige of hope extinguished, leaving only the bleak reality of her own choices. "I see," she whispered, the words barely audible. "It was nice to see you, Hannah," I said, my tone final. "Take care of yourself." I turned with Clara, and we walked away, back into the rhythm of the gallery, back into our life. Clara squeezed my hand. "Who was that, really?" she asked softly, not out of jealousy, but simple curiosity. I thought for a moment, looking at the strong, beautiful woman beside me, then at the vibrant painting on the wall, then at the city lights twinkling beyond the gallery windows. I thought about my quiet apartment, my fulfilling work, my deep, unshakable peace. And I realized, with a quiet sense of completion, that I didn't really have an answer. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.